Hi, friends. Thanks so much for joining us tonight as we finish up this semester's series of Integritas forums. These interview-style conversations are intended to provide you, our Sorin Fellows, opportunities to hear from and engage with successful professionals from a wide range of sectors, be it business, medicine, architecture, law, engineering, and the like, about their experiences and reflections on maintaining personal and ethical integrity across their professional, familial, and faith lives. These conversations will range from considerations on work-life balance, growing in the faith after college, vocational discernment in family life, and practical insight into professional development. The inspiration for this recurring event is really twofold. In all that we do through the Sorin Fellows program, we seek to elevate the relational character of your formation and resist the reductively transactional paradigm so characteristic of modern university education. These conversations are intended to allow you to get to know and learn from someone, rather than learn something or some abstract set of ideas apart from personal narrative. And as you well know, the Nicola Center is proudly a scholarly center at a research university, but we recognize and embrace that the majority of our students we engage through the Sorin Fellows program will not have careers bound to academia or the university, but rather will be scattered across a variety of public and private enterprises, whether through finance, medicine, research, law, engineering, and the like. Many of you will also be moms or dads, husbands or wives, good friends and counselors, community leaders, clergy, or religious. In the relational spirit of the center, we hope these conversations provide you opportunities to glean practical advice and enduring insight from persons who display virtues of truly integral formation, whether they work in the field you hope to enter, have a similar vocational path, or not. Now, of course, under normal circumstances, these conversations would best take place in person over LaCroix and Rocco's Pizza, which we plan on moving forward once our shared life together regains some normalcy. But in the interim, we will host these online, which will allow you to access and revisit this content at your own leisure, whether in your dorm room or on a walk around campus. The format of these conversations will be as follows. I'll interview our guest for about 30 minutes, covering topics from professional advice to personal discernment and everything in between. Then we'll be joined live by our guest so he or she can field questions from Sorin Fellows that arose out of the conversation. And that'll run for about 20 minutes or so. With that said, it's my pleasure to briefly introduce our guest this evening. Paul Harold is a partner at South Bank Legal, a law firm here in South Bend, Indiana. Paul's practice primarily focuses on solving business disputes. His past representative engagements span too widely to note in their entirety here, but range from contract and warranty disputes to trade secret and intellectual property theft. Paul also co-leads South Bank Legal's appellate practice and has handled appeals before the Indiana Court of Appeals, the Indiana Supreme Court, and the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit. Drawing on his experience teaching sales and warranty law at Notre Dame Law School, Paul also advises business clients on warranty and sales-related legal issues. Before joining South Bank Legal, Paul served 2 years as a law clerk to the Honorable Daniel A. Mannion of the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, and 2 years as a law clerk to the Honorable J. Leon Holmes of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Arkansas. Paul received his bachelor's degree in history and mathematics from Franciscan University of Steubenville, and following earned his law degree from Notre Dame Law School in 2005. Paul is a member of the Robert A. Grant Inn of Court and the St. Thomas More Society of South Bend. Paul and his wife Brenda have 7 wonderful children, Maggie, Tommy, Annie, Stella, Mary Frances, Felicity, and Lydia, and are parishioners of St. Joe Catholic Church here in Mishawaka. As a reminder, Paul will join us for a live Q&A immediately following, so please type your questions into the chat function via Zoom throughout our conversation, and we'll get to as many as we can. Paul, thanks so much for joining us tonight and taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedule to chat with us and our Sorin Fellows about what it is to be a lawyer and be a Catholic.
Well, thanks for having me, Pete.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where's home for you now? What are you doing professionally? And gosh, you're a husband and a father to 7 awesome kids. Tell us a little bit about your family life.
Yeah, so I'm from Eastern Ohio originally, and we ended up in a town that's very similar to where I grew up, actually, a dying industrial Rust Belt town with a university, although Notre Dame's a little bit bigger than Franciscan where I grew up. It was when I came out here for law school, I spent all 3 summers in law school here. And I remember turning to my, newly married wife and saying, gosh, this would be a really great place to raise a family, and not realizing that that was going to be a bit prophetic, because that's exactly what we've done. We spent 2 years in the South, and our Southern sojourn, if you will, came back up here in South Bend in 2007. Been there the whole time. It's just been marvelous. It's been really great. It's a type of place where you can walk or bike to work. So, and as far as raising a family, in this day and age, cost of living being what it is, it's great being in a dying industrial town, because, we found it to be a very family-friendly place, lots of great, faithful Catholics. And really, Notre Dame has brought just incredible people here. Not exactly, it's much different than I think any other kind of similarly situated town, as far as just the average Catholic you meet here who's connected with the university is a really fantastic. So just been very grateful for that aspect of the town.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Most of our guests on these Integritas chats this semester, actually all of them, did their undergrad at Notre Dame. So you are the exception that is proving the rule for these conversations. But I kind of want to explore that a bit. So could you share with us a little bit about your undergrad, especially in the way in which it shaped the way in which you discerned law school and kind of came to an understanding that Notre Dame was the place that you needed to be for law school, coming from your undergraduate institution?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I'd like to preface it by, I never would have gotten into Notre Dame undergrad. It's just incredible. All you people who have gone to Notre Dame, you're all incredible. You're all brilliant. But I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville. My dad actually teaches philosophy there. He's taught there for 30 years. And when I was, in high school, my dad said, you can go wherever you want to go for college as long as it's free. And that kind of limited my options to Franciscan, because we had the tuition benefit, and military academy. Well, long story short, I ended up at Franciscan, and I just can't say enough about how wonderful that school was, as far as forming me as a person, the education I got. So, for all of you, when you, have children and you're looking at schools for your children, don't count out these smaller Catholic colleges, because, what I really appreciate about Franciscan is this vocational approach. It's not about simply a credential. It's what is God calling you to do? And you have that supportive community, both of the other students who are kind of calling you on in your faith, but also your professor, the support of your professors. And then round it out with I felt like I got a first-class education there. I was a great books major. I was a math major. I also dabbled in philosophy, runs in the family a little bit. So, and we were treated, by the professors, it was a real, as kind of co-venturers on this great intellectual quest. And I always really appreciated that. And so I felt like I got a great education at Franciscan. And so, I'd encourage you, if you have siblings thinking about colleges, Franciscan and some of these other small Catholic colleges that popped up, Wyoming Catholic, JP Catholic. They're really doing wonderful things, as is Notre Dame. So, and it was funny, being at Franciscan though, full disclosure, Notre Dame is kind of seen as one of those fallen Catholic schools, So I was, when I showed up the first day for law school, I was wondering, where's the black mass going to be? And little did I know, Notre Dame was, the availability of the sacraments here at Notre Dame, when I was going there and today, is just unbelievable. It's nothing like any other institution in the world, I feel like. And so I was pleasantly surprised when I got here to Notre Dame, coming from Franciscan, about just how Catholic the campus really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I can second that. Even from an undergraduate perspective, you hear things about the university and in different critiques from different corners with respect to different issues and whatnot. But until you're actually on campus and you kind of breathe the air that is present here and realize the kind of vibrancy of the Sacramento life, it's almost hard to realize from an outsider's perspective how distinctly Catholic this place is in all its complexity, in a much larger scale than, say, Franciscan is,
Right.
in terms of size. And so there are different complexities that come along with that. But when you were at Franciscan, can you take us through a little bit of, like, you decided you wanted to go to law school. If you're getting into Notre Dame's law school, you're getting into other good law schools. So what drew you in your discernment to Notre Dame particularly? And was it kind of that resonance with that Catholic identity that maybe you didn't expect as much until you entered campus? And so could you walk us through a little bit of that discernment process, especially for some of our Sorin fellows who are thinking about law school now and maybe don't know how to plot points as to how to determine what is really important in choosing a law school?
Yeah, sure. So I would maybe preface my answer by saying I didn't come from a family background that had a tradition in the law. I frankly had no idea what I was getting myself into by going to law. What had fired the idea of the law in my mind was, I remember my junior year, there was a recruiter who came to Franciscan from Ave Maria Law School, which had just founded in Ann Arbor at that time, and gave this marvelous talk about the Catholic intellectual tradition in the law, and just how the importance of having faithful Catholics who are also excellent lawyers, and that really kind of fired me. And I was a math major, but I could see the handwriting on the wall, anybody who's been in math will know what I mean. Like, when you hit your math wall, and you realize there's beyond the point I'm at, I'm never going to understand the proofs or the theorems. Like, I knew I didn't have a future in math. But I'd always, what intrigued me about the law was kind of, just the logical structure similar to mathematics, but also kind of you have a good component of the humanities, the writing component. So that's kind of what got me fired on law school. And I was seriously, I actually, my first choice was actually Ave Maria. I applied Notre Dame just kind of for the fun of it. Actually, I didn't really realize, at the time it was really secondary. But I came out to campus here and Patty O'Hara just gave this amazing talk, about, being a Catholic and a lawyer to us, who had been admitted. And that really started changing my mind about Notre Dame. But what I'd say for your fellows, and this is what I tell, I do some kind of, essentially, I'm the de facto advisor for a lot of Franciscan students who take my father's class who are thinking about law school. And I say, the best way to test that vocation is, study for the LSAT and see what you get, because in this kind of climate, it does not make sense to go to a school that's not like a top tier school, with one exception. If you're looking at, there's a particular area where you think you want to settle down and practice law, then a regional school is fine. So to give you an example, the third school I applied to was Duquesne in Pittsburgh, because I'm an Eastern Ohioan, I'm from right outside Pittsburgh. And so, if we were planning actually on staying in Pittsburgh, and if I would have done that track, going to Duquesne would have been fine for that. But my advice is get into the best school you can, and see how you do on the LSAT. It's a very learnable test. At least it was when I was, again, what's this, almost 20 years ago, geez. But I think it's still a pretty learnable test. See what you get. And I would shoot high. That being said, I just can't say enough about Notre Dame and how fantastic the education I got there. And by and large, the professors who taught me, the young professors now, they're not so young, but there's a new crop too that are there that are just really fantastic. And I think because of Amy Coney Barrett, you're going to see Notre Dame actually rise in the rankings. It's already there kind of on the number of federal clerkships that are coming out of Notre Dame are pretty amazing. But I think Notre Dame will be is going to be considered in the top of it's already a top tier school, but it will be considered one of the top schools. So I would give Notre Dame serious consideration. That being said, I mean, I've always heard this. I haven't personally tested it because I'm from a different undergrad, but everybody said it's harder to get into Notre Dame Law School from Notre Dame undergrad because so many people apply, as opposed to like me from a little podunky undergrad that nobody's ever heard of. So you might actually be at a disadvantage there, but gosh, if you can do Notre Dame, I mean, it's such a fantastic experience, and I know we can talk about that. But again, my advice is, test that vocation, see how well you do on the LSAT. If you get a high score, if you get a lot of scholarship money offered to you by top tier institutions, that's a good sign that a calling in the law might be for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great succinct way of putting it. Thanks, Paul. We do have a fair amount of Sorin fellows who transition from undergrad into law school, but the volume of those applications is pretty significant. Luckily, I think even through some of the formation opportunities through the center, there are ways for our undergraduates to really distinguish their applications from that of the very competitive masses that are applying. And then we do have a pretty steady stream, and really kind of even this past year in 1L had a bumper crop. And so they're carrying the torch on from your stellar class 2, Paul. So fantastic. So I want to transition into kind of what you're doing right now. So we'll kind of fast forward through your postgraduate kind of clerkships and fellowships and things like that, and kind of situate us right now. What are you doing day to day? What's your position as a partner at a law firm here in South Bend? What does that entail?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a partner at South Bank Legal here in South Bend. We're a 20 lawyer firm. We're I'd say a business commercial law firm. We kind of span the range of business legal needs, everything from employment litigation to contract and commercial litigation to intellectual property, mergers and acquisitions. We do it. It's actually, I went small market, and so it's kind of neat because in my practice, one day, last week we had an appeal on a $112 million jury verdict, which was the largest in the state of Indiana, and we're working with an AmLaw top 10 law firm on that, and then I turn around and I'm helping my associate on a $10,000 loan collection case. So, we really see the gamut here in kind of being a smaller firm. But, what's neat about us is we've got a lot of people coming out of, a lot of my colleagues like me did federal clerkships on the district court and appellate level. They're coming from really big AmLaw top 100 law firms. Some are coming from, U.S. attorney positions. And, we all, because of really Notre Dame has a lot to do with this, we all settled down in South Bend. So we have kind of this, kind of a higher level of lawyer than you would normally see in a small town law firm. And that's been really neat to have colleagues like that. But, on a day-to-day basis, nice thing is, as a partner, I'm responsible probably about, 30 to 40 cases that I myself, I do primarily litigation. So I've got 30 to 40 cases in a given time that I'm responsible for managing, or, I'm assisting another partner, helping him manage those cases. They range, again, it's a broad spectrum: contract disputes, IP. We have a trade secrets case that, fingers crossed, is going to settle today. I also kind of head up our firm's appellate section with Steve Judge, my colleague. So we do a lot of the appellate briefing for the firm, which is, to me, that's the most fun part of the law, sitting down and writing an appellate briefing. So we do that. And then I do for a lot of, I'd say kind of mid-cap companies, making 10 to 100 million in sales. I do a lot of kind of like outside general counsel work, which is, they're companies, they're good businesses, but, maybe they can't afford to have, a lawyer full-time as their general counsel. They'll call me on a wide range of issues, everything from employee issues to, contract issues. And then, it's great. I either handle those, or if there's somebody in my law firm who's more specialized on those subjects than I get to kind of dish it out. And that's a neat experience because, those are the product of having built, long-term relationships with some business owners, and kind of being in that role as kind of the trusted advisor to them, both personally and the business, is one that I find, very fulfilling. I mean, challenging too, because you're dealing with different personality types that react differently to different news, and also, a lot of times know what they should do, but don't want to do it. And so I enjoy that. I'm a kind of a people person, so I enjoy the challenge of that as well. I was out in Elkhart, Indiana on Friday, so a couple of days ago, and drinking a larger glass of bourbon than I probably should have. Luckily, I had an associate driving for me, out there with the client, trying to convince them, basically telling them, look, I mean, this case that we had that we thought was a $3 million case is not a $3 million case. We look at the evidence, and, it was kind of good news, bad news. And the good news is we hadn't had to pay out of pocket a ton. But the bad news for the litigation was we weren't going to have a lot of damages. And it's like, dealing with some strong personalities, and that news, was not welcome. But, as the lawyer, my job is to deliver that as soon as I can, because I don't want, last thing I want is us to go forward and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and to find out we didn't have a case, right? So it's like, you kind of got to weather, you go out there and, you size up the personality of your client, and you kind of, you have that conversation. It's frank. But it's, it's also knowing your audience, and then you have a massive glass of bourbon afterwards with your client. And that's a good sign that they're not going to fire you over you telling them bad news. So that's kind of a slice of what it's like in the law practice.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I mean, as a non-lawyer, a non-JD, someone who's kind of more situated on the academic side of the house, I suppose. What I get from your comments is, certainly within law school and within clerkships, you gain specializations, and appropriately so. There is a trap to be kind of a generalist. You want to have kind of a strong specialization, right? But at the same time, there are kind of softer skills that are only gained through experience and are not necessarily technically gained through, the course of a 3-year JD program or JSD or whatever. And that for some of our current law students, or even some of our prospective law students who are undergrads now, there is certainly the necessity to become a specialist in particular areas, and that's fine. But in a day in the life of what your work is and entails, it actually requires like kind of softer people skills that are a little bit more reflective of a generalist approach, while at the same time having a specialization. Is that a fair characterization of your work?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, if you're going into law school, as I was going, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. But what I didn't realize is just, there's so many different skill sets, when you're practicing law, and you can find a niche, and it's very personality driven. And but I think one of the fallacies I think that people believe is that they have to have a certain personality to be a good lawyer, like, the chief, table pounder, or you have to have great people skills. And while there are positions that certainly require that, a good example, I have a colleague who's ridiculously smart, great guy, but he never wants to, hates like meeting face to face with anybody, and look, there's a place for him in our law firm because we need really smart people who can do high level, legal tasks and analysis. But so I think one of the good things you can do for yourself, if you're thinking about the law, is like take an honest stock of your personality. Like, what do I like? What do I don't like? And then, I would focus in on opportunities in the profession that really suit your personality. Because I think a lot of people out there that are miserable in the law, I mean, besides, I think, overworking themselves, which is a real which is a real danger. But I think they also like end up in situations that really don't fit their personality. So my first big piece of advice, kind of know thyself, right? Like what situation is going to be good for me? And that could look very different than what, the traditional, what we would think is the traditional route. And then the other thing, the second thing is like, it's like you said, it's an experiential profession. And you have to find good mentors. It's just absolutely crucial. I was so blessed to work for two phenomenal judges, and then to have John Ledoux, who's one of the name partners at our firm. He was my backstop, when I was on training wheels, learning the practice of law. And he really did have my back. And he had a good sense of like, hey, go out there and do that, experience it for yourself. So you'll learn, while at the same time kind of providing, again, that backstop. So I wasn't always falling flat on my face. I could catch me before I fell. And so like, when you're a young lawyer, like look for those people in your firm who are well respected, who are good, kind people, but are also fantastic lawyers, and latch onto them and learn from them. And that's kind of the best way to end up really being happy and competent in our profession. Because I will tell you, all you have to do is sit in any courtroom in America for a morning, and you realize there's a lot of people out there running around the law license who have no freaking clue what they're doing. So, don't be one of those people. And the great thing about, coming from an institution like Notre Dame is you're going to have fantastic opportunities in the law. So be selective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. The point about mentorship is something that I think is absolutely very clearly applicable to those who are entering the law. We've had conversations with a senior VP in marketing and sales for a consulting firm, a doctor at Memorial Hospital here in South Bend, and a sacred architect. And each one of them has also mentioned, as part of their formation, become as successful and kind of integrated as they are, as excellent whatever they are, and Catholics, they have benefited from having a mentor. And so that's something that certainly is applied in the law, but this is a common thread that we're seeing kind of in conversations across different sectors. So it just kind of underscores that relational character of formation for me. So thank you for sharing that. So you talk about kind of the backstop and kind of the training wheels of doing the law. And that's obviously the case for a lot of folks, whether they're in the law or not. And at the same time, however, you were kind of carving out and living out a deeper vocational kind of path, which is one to be a husband and a father. And these things are happening simultaneously in some sense. So can you kind of just share with us a little bit how you navigated that path of being a very intentional husband and father, discerning a call to marriage, acting on the kind of vocation of being a father, while at the same time kind of trying to grow in excellence in your own professional career? It seems like a tough balance to strike.
Well, it's the nice thing about it is it doesn't happen all at once. Rome's not built in a day. Kind of looking back after 20 years, you're like, wow, like how did that all happen? But the nice thing is it didn't all happen in one day. But I think one of the things that I think is kind of theme of my life is not asking enough of God. Every time I've put a serious decision in front of our Lord, and I've said, okay, like you got to do it, not me. Gosh, I've just gotten so much clarity, and it's just been so helpful, from, meeting my spouse, to decisions, about whether to have children, or when to have children, jobs to take. I mean, ask, like the Lord wants us to ask more of him. He wants to participate even more intimately than we can. And the cool thing about it is it's still like like the Lord doesn't, it's like, no, I got it from here, shove you out of the way, Paul Harold. It's like, it really is like, it's like you really see like it's him acting through you without ever kind of, like destroying your own personality. In fact, you become more yourself, and I think that's, if I look back the last, 20 years from when I left the position that all of you are in to now. It's just the route just seems like it's this constant, like me veering way off course, and then the Lord correcting, and then me veering way off course. But it's like, like, and I think the real challenge too is just to be mindful of the Lord. Like, and we get so focused on things like even family and career, which are good things, and that we have to, and that we have to do, and the Lord wants us to do. But like, we could all do more of like actually allowing the Lord to walk with us through that, and I'm going to tell you what, I've told people during the marriage prep classes we do, like we have to stop thinking about marriage and family and vocation as like something that's easy. like NFP, that's a good example. Like, when we had an NFP class, we had a great instructor. I won't tell you who it was. Beautiful person associated with the university, beautiful person. But the way it was presented was, it's like, oh, you follow these steps and it's, and easy peasy, right? It ain't easy. It ain't easy at all. We had 7 kids, right? But, the thing, like, I think it's more like mountain climbing. Like, it's going to be really freaking hard. And when you're in the middle of it, and of course, like, there's been so many times, when we've had, at one point we had 5 kids under the age of 7, right? Like, wow. And I've got these, I'm a young lawyer and I'm experiencing these, stressful cases for the first time while I'm coming home to like all these kids and a wife who's really strung out because it's really exhausting. Right. But it's like the thing about like mountain climbing is like, it's really hard, but then you get to these summits and you're just like, dang, that's amazing. Right. And that's kind of like, I feel like really the Christian life is like, it's like hanging in there until God just gives us that little glimpse. And you're like, wow. Like, it's like now where, we're kind of on the other side of it. We still have small children, so we're not quite on the other side of it. But you see these glimpses in the children where you're just like, wow, you just want to like, it just takes your breath away in awe of our Lord and what he does, and his mercy to us. And that's the thing too, you'll see, as you progress through your career, just how merciful our Lord is. I've had many instances in my career where, man, like I really blew something. I really messed it up bad. And our Lord has mercy, and things turn out totally different than you anticipated, but better, and guess what? Like, it doesn't involve winning cases, even the cases that you thought you really should have won, and you did everything you could to win them. And you get this unjust ruling from the judge and you're like, why did that happen? And then something else is revealed to you. And, again, it's just a little sliver. We're still on the other side of heaven right now. We're not going to understand it fully, but it's those things that that keep you going up the mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thanks for sharing that. I love that image. And what you spoke of, speaks to me. And I think it speaks to kind of the typical Notre Dame student, not to caricature them in any way, but there's kind of a crippling fear of failure. And so you kind of cast your nets very in a very calculated way to ensure that your pride is not damaged by failing in a particular way. And that in some sense inhibits your ability to issue kind of that daily fiat, whether it's within your family life or within your professional life. You're setting up kind of these very safe boundaries wherein your ego, my ego, I can speak as Pete, my ego is not damaged by the fact that I have to stare in the face that I failed at something. And that's not necessarily indicative of my worth as a person or my quality as a higher education administrator or as a husband or whatever. But rather, these are just, this is the course of life. And, in kind of over calibrating and over manipulating these kind of barriers that prevent you from feeling as though you're failing, there is an inability to get to those summits that you described, to actually see the way in which the Lord is bringing about his providence, even through, well, certainly through your successes, fine, but even through your failures. And that's, I think, something that is on the mind of Sorin fellows, and perhaps we can get to it in the Q&A of how do you not be determined by fear and the fear of failure, and not have it be considered as representative of your self-worth as a husband, father, mother, wife, or as lawyer, doctor or whatever. And I think that's kind of one of the cruxes of discernment and professional development that I think Sorin fellows and ND students have to deal with. So thank you very much for kind of surfacing that for us. Because I kind of think that's like taboo to talk about. It's like, what happens if you fail at something? You know, it can be a very good, constructive, generative thing. But it's a good point to make. So I have two last questions because I don't want to burn all this time in conversation and not leave time for a question and answer. And you've been speaking to this in everything that you've shared, which has been so generous. For any of our Sorin fellows, so of course we have those who are going to enter law school and they're very talented and whatnot, probably mostly in PLS and con studies and stuff like that. And we also have current law students who are Sorin fellows, and so they're 1Ls through 3Ls thinking about Blackstone or thinking about clerkships or whatever. But even to any student, you know, even if they aren't going to pursue the law, as you look back at your formation as a student, as a law student, in your clerkships, in your first jobs, after your clerkships, like what piece of advice can you share with them that you see now in retrospect that you couldn't see, you know, in the thick of it? Like as you look back at that formation, what do you wish you could tell yourself that now you wish you could tell a Sorin fellow?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. And I think to touch upon what you were saying earlier, I mean, that do not fear. You know, you're never going to eliminate fear. But I think there's a real courage in doing these, you know, going forward and meeting these new challenges, whether it's professionally, you know, or it's, you know, maybe your wife got, you know, you got pregnant as a couple before you had thought you would, or you know, or there's some twist and turn, you know, just you know, the courage isn't, you know, doing it with the absence of fear. It's actually being very afraid and yet still trusting that the Lord is going to make this all right and doing it. And when I look back, you know, like that's the first thing. And then the second thing is just freedom. Like being myself, like learning who I am truly, and every day striving to be more myself. I feel like we have this fear, and we all have it, that everybody's expecting someone different from us. But actually, like, and we can't really know ourselves again unless, I mean, the Lord has to reveal it to us. That's the only person who can. But the more we understand who that person is, who the Lord made us to be, and the more that we say every day, I want to be more myself than I was yesterday. Like I want this core of me that the Lord made. Like I want that I want my actions to be congruous with who I really am, who I was made to be. And once we do that, like happiness and joy inevitably results from that, because we're in a situation now where we really are flourishing, you know, like, and so listen to those signs, you know, that's why we need to spend, like, prayer is so important, because, you know, that's where we kind of get the bat signals where we're like, oh, you know, if we're feeling unsettled, why are we feeling unsettled? Or if we're constantly rubbing up against something here, why is that happening? You know, listen to that, you know, and make decisions accordingly. And that's the one thing, you know, like, you know, if I would go back and I was 22 again, you know, like, look, you know, focusing on who does the Lord want me to be? Who did he make me to be? Like that's, and acting that and not acting out of fear. I think that would be the one thing, you know, I would say to all of you, that is the key to joy. That is the key to happiness, both in this life and in the next. And that is the thing to pursue with our whole heart.
Oh, I love it. I'm not even going to follow up on that. I'm just going to let that rest on the ears of the students. And we're going to move on to a final bonus question.
Question. Yes.
Bonus question time. So, Paul, you are a frequent attendee with your wonderful family of the Nicola Center for Ethics and Culture tailgates when we have tailgates in normal circumstances. And so I asked this question of Sorin fellows a lot, and I'm gonna turn it on to you now. So you're at a DCEC tailgate, a beautiful September fall day, and you can crack open a LaCroix or alternative adult beverage with anyone who has ever lived, you know, deceased now or alive now, whatever, anyone. Who are you cracking open a cold one with, and why?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I'd have to say, I have to go, number one, I have to go my namesake, St. Paul. I loved, I don't know if you guys have seen the new St. Paul movie. Absolutely loved it. Wasn't expecting to love it, because most of these Christian movies are, you can expect the budget to be low, production values to be low, the acting to be low, and the screenwriting to be suspect. But it kind of blew me away. But what I loved about, it was like a buddy movie kind of embedded in this biblical tale, like the relationship between Paul and Luke was like so arresting, because like that's, I've experienced that with my, fraternity brothers in college and close male friends, right? So, but it's also just like, the guy was like tough as flint, right? Like, just to like sit down. The other thing too is like piecing together all the voyages and where he was, I've tried to like read books on St. Paul and like I can't figure it out. Where is this? Like just understanding that, I think it would just be like so amazing to talk to him. And the other cool thing I think about him is, think of all the millions of people who've walked this earth with the name of Paul, right? And I always think about a lot of time, I feel like I'm the polar opposite of him. I'm not tough at all. I love comfort. I'm not like, I don't speak out. I hide in the closet. But it would be neat to see like, well, kind of what qualities St. Paul has. The graces that he's bestowed on all of us Pauls throughout history. That would fascinate me. So that would be my number one.
Love
and then number two, not to promo your beautiful books back here, but
do it.
But having read through, I'm on book 2 of your 1917, so I went through 14, and then 16, and now, man, gosh, like it never has there been a man who like I feel like the psychology of the characters is amazing. His historical grasp is unbelievable, considering like all these sources had to be clandestinely got, and then on top of that, just the literary style and some of the imagery is just incredible. So like, and then his like, his political and philosophical insights into the situation are just unbelievable. So having a beer with him, especially at these tailgates, which you guys have the best tailgate in campus. It really is amazing. And frankly, the people who already attend your tailgates, you get some just phenomenal people there. The conversations, the random people I run into. It's just marvelous that we have this at Notre Dame, where these people who gather. The modern St. Paul's and Solzhenitsyns are there at the tailgate, so you can talk to them. That's right. That's right. Thanks for asking the question.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we'll reserve a table for St. Paul, Paul Harold, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn at the next tailgate. You got it. So, Paul, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll pause there and we'll get to the live Q&A in a moment. But thank you for the witness of your life, your work, your family, and look forward to catching up sometime soon.
Well, thanks so much, Pete, and God bless to all you Sorin fellows. You're going to all do great things. You're going to renew the culture. It's going to be awesome.
We're on our way, friend. We're on our way. Take care. All right. Well, Paul Harold, welcome to the show, and welcome to your wonderful children live here at the Nicola Center for Ethics and Culture. Hi, Stella. All right. Well, we have questions coming in, and the kids are welcome to field them, and you are as well, Paul. I'll let you pass off any of the ones that you can't answer. So how about we start there? So we have 3 off the top from students. And is it all right if I get into them right now?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So a question coming in from a student. Can you share thoughts about how current and future law students, this would be a future law student, should think about the myriad of summer fellowship and clerkship opportunities out there during law school? Blackstone is a popular one at the Nicola Center and the NDLS community. How important are they? Are there alternatives to them that allow for the professional development that they provide? How would you suggest someone who's in law school or thinking about law school to think about these summer opportunities?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. Blackstone's fantastic. I had a lot of friends do it when I was in law school. I would kind of categorize that as, it's one of these, it's a kind of an intellectual summer, and I didn't do Blackstone, but I kind of did something similar. I interned for Americans United for Life And it allowed me to kind of read the whole canon of the Supreme Court substantive due process jurisprudence. It was really great, like to kind of fire yourself intellectually in the law and kind of dig in, to kind of the deeper, traditions. So I first summer is a great time to do that because there's usually not that many paying jobs that you're going to be able to find, frankly, as a 1L. But then like the second summer, I would look for an experience where like you're really going to start learning the practice of law. And I got lucky because I just fell into the U.S. Attorney's Office here. I had done well my first year, and I was a bit overconfident in kind of, my firm job applications. And I think that came across in my interviews because I didn't end up getting a single offer from a firm. I was like, what am I going to do? And then I ended up falling in with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it was awesome because they let us, Donald Schmidt was my mentor there. He was amazing. He let us argue motions hearing, write briefs. I mean, it was a fantastic experience. I learned a lot actually about how the sausage is actually made. And I think that was really valuable for me, especially because I knew early on I wanted to do the clerkship route. So kind of starting to understand, federal practice and procedure, federal criminal law was just really helpful. But I would encourage, if you're looking at, a summary at a firm, look for one that's actually lets you do real stuff, like go to the hearings, be with the partner at the deposition, is not to plug South Bank, but our summer associates this year, the first thing they did was come with me to a preliminary injunction hearing in Hammond, Indiana. So, they got to see, hey, here's how the sausage is made in state court. So look, I would look for stuff like that, because the sooner, frankly, law school doesn't do a good job on the practical side. And the sooner, if you're going to have to practice law for a living, the sooner you get into that, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think that is something that is on the minds of Sorin fellows, both probably in law school and those anticipating law school, but it's almost like a little taboo to ask because you don't want to be seen as I don't know what I'm doing. You don't want to let your guard down in that way. And so to be able to be so candid, for you to be so candid about that, I bet you it's quite helpful. It's like in class when the professor asked, does anyone have any questions? And you have a question, but no one else raises their hand. And so you're like, I'm not going to ask a question if no one else has questions because it's my problem. So thank you for sharing that. A question from one of our Sorin Fellow superstar undergrads, Nicholas Holmes. He asked, what is working at a firm in a smaller market like South Bend? What does that compare to working in a larger market like Chicago or New York? Both, I'd imagine, in the substance of the work and then also just in the way it affects how you live your life beyond your profession.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's certain types of cases that you're really only going to see in the big firms. There's certain types of deals you're really only going to see in a big firm. And I think, from that perspective, if I was thinking about it again, if I hadn't done the clerkships, I think the big firm is a great route to go to actually get trained up because you're going to see a different type of case than you're ever going to see in a small. I think in the law is easier. It's easier to go down than it is to go up in the law for sure. But that being said, if you go to a big firm, it's going to be like working 2 jobs. It's going to be 80 hours a week in the bank. So I always tell young law students, hey, if you're not married, you don't have kids, great time to do the big firm, right? But it's gonna be way more intense than what I'm doing now. And no matter what legal recruiters tell you, what people at who are interviewing with the big firms tell you, it is very hard to build 2,000 hours a year, just 2,000, right? And most of the big firms now, the minimum is 2,400. Do the math. That is a 10-hour day every day and some on Saturday if you want to take a little bit of vacation time. It is intense. So just be prepared. And I've had friends, they go in there and they're like, okay, I know I'm just here for short term for training. I'm going to move on. And I think having kind of that attitude, you'll get the good training. Obviously the paycheck's pretty good, not bad. You can take, for a couple of years, you can do that. Even if you have a family, you can take the hit for a couple of years and then move on to something else like an in-house position, or a government job or smaller firm, right? Once you get that kind of big firm training. But the other thing too is it's very easy to get lost in a big firm because they're huge and they're not about looking at your experience. So when you're in a big firm, you really got to fight to get that experience. And the temptation in a big firm, I'll tell you right now, is because the hourly are so onerous, the temptation is just to get staffed on big document review projects and have 10 easy hours where you sit there clicking the button. And while that's great for meeting your hourlies, you're not going to develop as a lawyer. You're not going to develop. So what you want to do is actually go get those experiences. But the problem with that is a lot of your time is not going to be able to be billed because guess what? A first year lawyer doesn't know what they're doing. So, but if you have the mentality look, I'm not here long term. So I don't care if I make partner at the big firm. I want to get trained. I want to learn how this works so I can be an awesome lawyer and then go, pick a job that's more family friendly or that's not as crushing. Then I think you can kind of take some of that pressure off to bill, and actually focus on trying to get staffed on cases where you actually get to do the substantive work. That'd be my advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I mean, it seems like such a clear difference in the kind of quality of life, and it is reflective of kind of where a particular person is in their discernment. You had mentioned kind of single married life and kind of entrance into kind of big law. There's some significant conversations and significant discernment that needs to be had, wherein maybe the kind of standard professional development decision might point you in one direction, but the actual effect that it has on your quality of life, especially with respect to these more kind of important relationships within the context of family, whether to a spouse or spouse and children, might move the needle in the less professionally advantageous direction. But that is indicative of kind of these deeper values that really don't have and shouldn't have a monetary value associated with them. So thanks for sharing that. It's kind of inside baseball to, even things that I wouldn't even think of not being in the field. So thank you. I think we have time for about one more question, if that's all right. And this is a little bit more personal. As you look back at your early career and kind of being a husband and a father, how can, in the spirit of a kind of not wanting to be determined by fear and kind of the scrupulous souls that Sorin fellows are, how can young lawyers support their spouse in the context of the many sacrifices he or she makes to allow the other to devote time to the practice? And kind of, I guess, more concisely put, I guess it would be something like, how do you love a spouse of a lawyer well? Speaking from experience or those who've been around.
Well, I got to be careful how I answer this because my wife is standing right off camera.
That's the reason I asked.
Yeah, but gosh, I mean, my wife comes from a farming stock, and gosh, her dad is just the hardest working man I think I know. I mean, just incredible. And so it was good, but also kind of bad when she compared the law to farming as far as the hours that are put in. But looking back, it's like every time like you can really kind of see like where you insisted on your own will and doing things the way you thought they needed them to be done. And in reality, it hurt my wife and it hurt the family, right? And it's hard, but you gotta, it's like in the profession, right? Like you think, I gotta get clients, right? I gotta get clients. So I gotta go out and I gotta socialize, and I gotta be out and, sorry, honey, even though you've been with the kids, for 10 hours today, I'm going to go out drinking, bourbon with this prospect. Right. And it's so many times I thought I needed to do that and I really didn't. Now there's times that you really do need to do that. Right. But it's like, I think really kind of this examination of conscience, like, am I doing this because I want to do it? Right. And it's like, there were many good things in my life that had to go by the wayside. Right. Like, I did Christ Renews His Parish at my parish. but like that almost destroyed my marriage because it was like, I mean, it was like I wanted to do it. It actually wasn't about me. It was like about me like getting away and having this night off. And that wasn't, you know, like same thing like Knights of Columbus, right? Like these are great organizations. They're great to be involved with, but don't be involved with them when you have 5 kids under 7, right? You know, and then find like you have to like find the time for your spouse. You just have to do that, you know. And one of the things that we do now, before like I used to think exercise was just like, oh, lift 500 pounds and not do 3 million push-ups. But now like our exercises, we just go on a walk together, and it's like amazing. Like who knew walking was so incredible? It's a chance to get exercise, to have that 45 minutes with your spouse, you know, where your spouse can kind of download you on everything that's happened that day. And trust me, there's a ton of stuff that happens while you're not at home. And it's actually kind of been cool to work from home during this pandemic, because like to see, you know, the rhythm of the house and just me being more in awe of my wife and everything that she does during the day. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, like being the lawyer really is the easier part of this. But yeah, I mean, find those, be intentional about finding ways to spend time with your spouse. I mean, there's nothing more than your spouse wants than your time, you know? And guess what? Even if you're billing $1,200 an hour at a big firm partner rate, it's still not, your time's not worth that much that you can't spend it with your spouse, you know? So that'd be my advice.
I love it. Yeah, thanks so much for offering that, Paul. And I think it's actually a great way to end, because we're coming up on an hour as it is, and I wouldn't want to cramp in anymore on your family time, especially with your spouse and your wonderful children. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight and answer these questions and be with us. We'll look forward to being able to reconnect with you sometime soon, hopefully at some sort of Center for Ethics and Culture event in person, perhaps with Alexander Solzhenitsyn, maybe not. But in the interim, take care, God bless, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Pete. Thanks everybody for listening.
Good night.